Welcome to the Modern Husbands podcast, where any combination of Dr. Bruce Ross, Christian Sherrill, and Brian Page host national experts who share winning ideas to manage money and the home as a team. I'm Brian Page, founder of Modern Husbands. Sometimes our listeners want more support than a podcast can give, individual or couple support, which I provide as an accredited financial counselor and fair play facilitator. Details can be found at modernhusbands.com. For today's episode, we welcome Dr. Corinne Low, an associate professor of business economics and public policy at the Wharton School. Dr. Low has spoken to top academic institutions such as Harvard University, Stanford, and Oxford, as well as organizations like the New York Federal Reserve, Brookings, and the U.S. Department of Labor. Her research focuses on the economics of gender and discrimination. Her first book, Having It All, is a bestseller and the focus of today's conversation. We discuss the evolving definition of success, emphasizing the need to balance career ambitions with personal fulfillment and lifestyle needs. They challenge the traditional notion of success as merely career maximization, advocating for a more holistic approach that includes financial stability and time management. Enjoy the show. Dr. Low, we are so happy that you're here. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
I read your book, Having It All. I was one of the fortunate ones who was sent an advanced copy, and I read it in one day. It was 2 separate sittings, and I couldn't put it down. If you are a dual income couple, you're likely a listener to our podcast. It's a must read. It should be required before you get married because it is a data-driven look into the challenges that women face who are exceptional in their career or have blossoming careers, and what it is, I feel, that men can do, whether it's a manager or as it pertains to what we do at Modern Husbands as spouses, to provide the environment that's necessary for women to excel in the workforce. And it's not something that has necessarily been taught to men, and it should be required. And your book also, it uses economic terms to explain a lot of things. And as a former AP macro micro teacher, I was literally smiling ear to ear as you were going into like specialization and comparative advantage. And I wanted to bring up absolute advantage, which is a case in my house. My wife has absolute advantage over everything because she's better than me at everything. We just choose like what I do. Anyway, with all of that said, I want to lead it off by asking you a question. It just obviously starts with your book that argues that women's unhappiness is not a result of trying too little, but of operating within systems that were never designed for them to succeed. So what do you see as the biggest structural change that would make dual career households more sustainable today?
That is a big question. And I think, you hit the nail on the head kind of with the whole framing of the book, right? Because the idea is that we have this kind of impartial gender revolution where women's roles have converged to men's in the workplace, but men's roles haven't converged to women's at home. And so women are trying to have it all in a system where they just don't have the same support that their male colleagues have. And so then they feel like they're failing. They feel like they're the ones who are falling short when, exactly as you said, it's the system. And so I think there's changes that we need at work and there's changes that we need at home. And at work, I think what we need are better boundaries because our workplace is still set up for the man who has a stay-at-home wife who can work 80 hours and be on call on weekends and evenings. And fewer of our households operate that way, right? Your male employees, that's not necessarily their reality either. We need boundaries at work. And at home, we need to finish the gender revolution. We've got to figure out a way to get men involved in doing their fair share of the housework, of the childcare. And, I talk about in the book, but men's time doing housework hasn't budged since the 1970s. It's just been flat. And so, even if we could just dial that up a little bit, it would make such a huge difference for so many families.
Obviously, as Modern Husbands, we fully agree and support that revolution. You write in your book that we should think like economists when making life decisions. And obviously, as Brad just said, he's in wholehearted agreement. As a finance professor, I'm in agreement with that. But how can couples apply that mindset at home? Like when deciding how to divide money, chores, childcare, how can we think like economists?
Yeah, and I want to be clear that I think sometimes people hear me say that and they're like, you're reducing marriage to just like an equation and you're taking all the care and the love out of it. And I'm like, I don't think so at all, because like in economics, one
That's
of the
not how
things
Brian
that
and I take it.
good, thank you. But one of the things we study is that, like marriage produces surplus because you care for each other, because you take things off of each other's plates. And so what it really means though, is it just means thinking about who's getting the highest return to their time in what domains. And so what that means is in a dual earning couple, there's going to be times where one person has a higher return to leaning in at work and they need the support of the other person. And that might switch back and forth over the course of the relationship. So for example, if somebody is studying for their final exams in law school, and if they pass those and get good grades in those exams, that's going to mean that they're going to be able to get a better law job. That's this moment where if they have more time, there's a really high return to that time in terms of the household's earnings over a lifetime. For me, in the example I write about in the book, I was on the tenure track at Wharton. And so if I was able to lean into my job and publish a few more papers, that meant higher earnings for the rest of my career because I was going to secure tenure at Wharton, right? So that's thinking like an economist. It's saying it's not about who has sort of the right to this time or what the gender role is of who's supposed to be working more. It's saying, wait, what's the actual return on this time to us as a couple? And then I apply that to the home domain too, because, one of the things I write about is how out of control the time that we spend with our kids is, some of it in a really good way, some of it because we have a better understanding of child development and what it takes to build a human than our own parents did. And so we're investing more in child human capital. But some of it because there's all of this pressure to keep up with the Joneses or to keep up with the women on Instagram who are cutting shapes out of their kids' sandwiches every day, right? And for women as like working moms, it's like maybe that's not going to be possible for us. And so really thinking critically again about the return on your time and saying, yeah, I want to invest in my kids, but I'm going to get a higher return to sitting at the kitchen table and doing homework with them than I am to making myself crazy because, I have to make handmade baby food and freeze it in little cubes because that's what everybody's doing on Instagram.
I love that. So I guess following that, like you describe relationships and careers as quote unquote deals, that, as you said, exchange time, effort, money for certain payoffs. How do couples really assess whether they're getting that good deal at home and at?
So I think you're getting a good deal if you feel like your relationship is serving you. It's making you stronger. It's making you better. It's helping you bring more to the table in your life, right? And if you feel like your relationship is draining you, if you feel like it's something that you put resources into, but you're not getting something back out of, right? Then maybe that deal's not working for you. And if it's not working for you now, and I know you guys are in the business of preventing divorces, right? If it's not working for you now, eventually it's going to stop working for everybody. Because when you get so burned out, it doesn't work for anybody anymore, right? So the key thing is you should, because there's economic surplus from forming a relationship, you both should actually be able to get more out than you give. But that requires both people putting a lot in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think sometimes it's easy to end up in the position as a working mom where you are giving to everybody else and you are not being nourished and restored and supported by those same structures. And so that's the audit, the evaluation that I want you to do is to say, when I look at my marriage, when I look at my family, how much is my cup actually getting filled? How much are they kind of investing back into me for everything that I invest in them? And I don't want to blame anybody or to say like, oh, that means someone's not giving you your first share and make it really like transactional. It's not meant to be like that. It's just meant to be an assessment that it's so easy to fall into these patterns where you just keep taking on and then, never get anything back. There's this Onion headline that I always like to refer to. So this satirical newspaper, The Onion, and it's mom hasn't ordered favorite pizza topping in over a decade. And I think that's really telling because when I talk to families, it always resonates with them. And it's never dad that doesn't get his favorite pizza topping. So it's like, oh, okay, the kids want cheese. And then like dad wants pepperoni. So it's half cheese, half pepperoni. And then like mom wants like mushroom and spinach, but like that never gets on the pizza, right? So you've got to be in a family where you get your favorite pizza topping sometimes, right? Where everybody gets their favorite pizza topping. And the same exact, since you asked about work, the same exact mindset for work, it's you exchange your time and your effort at work to get out money and fulfillment. And you've got to do a checkup every now and then and make sure that like that balance of trade is even between you, right? That you are getting out from your job what you want from it, that it's serving your life, and not mistake your job for your purpose in life, right? Because I think we've almost been programmed by kind of the Lean In and the Girl Boss, books to say what you're supposed to do is maximize career success. But success, quote unquote, doesn't necessarily put food on the table, and it doesn't put time back in your day. So I want us to define success as when your job is serving your lifestyle, right? When it is enabling you to be fulfilled in your life because you are getting a good deal in exchanging your time for money. And it's enough money that your family can live on. It's meeting your financial goals, but it's also meeting your time goals, which is something that so often gets distorted as we invest more and more in our careers.
Quick follow-up. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
My 8-year-old's favorite pizza is Hawaiian pizza. So
Is it really?
I can't take that away from him,
Okay. All right. Good for you. You're one hell of a mom if you're still eating that pizza. Anyway, go ahead, Bruce.
I can't eat it, but I do order.
I'm against Hawaiian, but pineapple with like a Cuban pork and like jalapenos is awesome.
All right. That sounds like a good compromise
like pulled
position.
Pork, like smoked pulled pork with pineapple and jalapenos is awesome. That's just my 2 cents there.
It's that, you know what? I'm imagining you eating that with like a knife and fork.
No, it's completely messy.
Okay. All right.
But actually, could you give us an example that you've seen of like of a good deal, either at home or at?
Well, that's such an interesting question. I mean, I think for the women who I know who are happy in their marriages, that's what I mean by you're getting a good deal, right? It's, as I said, it's like where they feel like their marriage is supporting all the other aspects of their life. And it's not that it becomes sort of like a resource drain, or it becomes, the thing that you have to focus on all the time, right? It's that it's a support structure for them to live and have the life that they want to have, So I will say, I think that I have a really good deal right now, in that, I am in a relationship where we support each other's needs. And so there's periods where like I just had a book tour and my wife was basically a single parent. And I also had a baby in May. So we have like an infant, and my wife was basically single parenting while I was off on the book tour. And then she is like opening the country's first Netflix house. It's like an in-person Netflix experience center. It's super cool, but she's opening it and they are opening tomorrow. And so she's basically been living there for a couple of weeks. And I've been the one who's kind of single parenting and juggling everything. And, but the reason I would say it's a good deal is because we support each other's needs. So when we each have those busy periods or those periods of investment, we are leaning into each other's careers and we're saying like, I am here to help you get what you want in life. And I am here to support you in making sure that that happens. And yes, I know other women who are married to men, unlike me, who do get that good deal, but it really means like that the relationship supports them. It meets them where they're at. And then I know other women who are saying like, this feels so hard that I have to figure out the logistics. If I want to travel for work, I've got to meal plan in advance. I've got to arrange all the childcare and all the play dates. I've got to kind of stage manage everything, and then I'm still going to answer 50 texts and a dozen phone calls, to keep things from falling apart while I'm gone, right? So I think those types of questions of like, can you easily pick up and travel for work and you feel like, okay, the other person has got this back home. And then in careers, I see all across the spectrum of people where I feel like they have found the career that genuinely supports them. and they've made it. And sometimes it is making it to a certain level in your career. It usually is not at like an entry level job. One of the things that I want people to think about is when you're in an entry level job, you work a lot and you don't actually get paid that much. Okay. But what you are getting out of it is human capital. And that human capital, which is your knowledge, your know-how, your ability, your training, is what's going to enable you to upgrade what I call your time to money machine, right? Your conversion of your time into money later in your career. And so I think sometimes like the younger generation, they're like, well, I've heard we should have work-life balance and we should have leisure, and like this job's not giving it to me. What the heck, right? And I think it is important to note that sometimes that's something you earn as you progress in your career, because one of the ways I think you get a good deal early in your career is if you are getting opportunities for training and for knowledge that's going to help you take your career to the next level, right? But later in your career, as things go along, as you enter the period that I call the squeeze, where, career pressures and time pressures from kids and home life kind of all convene at the same time, you want to make sure that you have a good time to money conversion ratio. And that's where I see women getting trapped in bad deals, is they've done those like high investment careers that supposedly promise you're going to make it one day. You're going to make partner, you're going to make principal, you're going to make managing director. And then they're still throwing all of their time into the money machine later in their careers, and they don't have time to spend any of that money to enjoy it, right? They can afford expensive vacations, but they can't take them. And so that's the audit for, are you getting a good deal? Is your career supporting you where you are in your life? And so if you're in your early 20s and you have time to trade for learning and for career advancement, by all means do it. But if you get into your late days, your fees, and you say, I thought this would be paying off by now and it's not, you might have had a good deal that turned into a bad deal, and it's time to renegotiate.
Listeners have told us that they love the ideas we share on our podcast to manage money in the home as a team, but want more help than one episode can provide. That's why I'm excited to announce On the Same Page Consulting for corporations, couples, and individuals. Visit modernhusbands.com and click Our Services at the top of the page to learn more about how I can help you or your employees manage money in the home as a team. Again, that's modernhusbands.com. Now back to the show.
So, I guess, so what you're speaking to then is like what you've also found in your relationship. For those that have found that even when women are the primary breadwinners, they're doing still more of the cooking, they're doing the cleaning, they're doing a lot of the logistics and organization. So what does the data tell us about why this happens? And then also what needs to shift culturally for men to truly then share in this load?
Yeah. And I think the why is going to vary by household. I think there's households where the guy is kind of stuck in outdated gender roles and he doesn't think that he should have to do some of these things, right? And those ones might be a little bit harder to move. And then I think there's households where the guy says like, yeah, I think I do about half. And, I talk about this iceberg of invisible labor where, the home production is like an iceberg. There's the tip of the iceberg that's above the surface that you see. And that's, the tasks like dropping the kid off at school, that's bedtime, that's cooking a big meal on Saturday for everybody to enjoy. But then there's the invisible labor that's underneath the surface that is, buying clothes in the right size and keeping track of everyone's schedules and appointments. And it's feeding a toddler 3 meals and 2 snacks a day, not the like big fancy, Sunday meal for everybody that people like to cook, right? And so I think oftentimes the guys who say, oh yeah, I think I'm doing about half, they're doing half of the tip of the iceberg, right? But she's carrying the invisible load that's underneath the surface. And so there, I think the solution is a little bit easier because you have shared values. So what it means is you need to make the invisible labor visible. And so that's where, if you go to my website, CorinneLow.com, I have this time tracking spreadsheet. And so if you have somebody who's on board to do this with you, you guys can track your time together and see, okay, we have shared values. We said that we should each be doing about half. And yet we didn't realize how much she's doing. We didn't realize that when she goes to work, she's confirming the doctor's appointment and she's texting the parents for the play date and she's answering texts from the anxious teen, right? And there's all of this invisible work that's happening. And once we surface that, now we can start to divide it fairly.
I was on my way to, I went to my first SEC football game this weekend. And as we were driving, my buddy who He's a modern husband. His wife's an attorney. He's a scientist. And they definitely, I'm there a lot and I see it. But he admittedly is like, I don't do enough of the mental load. I want to do more. So, I mean, this is a guy that's like obviously all trying to be better. And when we were trying to uncover like kind of where's the origin of this, I feel like his story is really similar with a lot of other guys where when his child was born, he didn't have very much paid paternity leave, but she had a lot. And so because she stayed home, all of a sudden, like these new habits were formed as a result of that were never unbroken and actually grew.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's, unless it's highlighted to couples before they have a child, that like you are going to have the systemic pressures pushing against you and you actually have to team up and push back, that you're just going to do that naturally and slip into them, even though that's not what you want. And even though it's not reflective of your values.
Yeah, no, 100%. So well put. And that's why I actually really recommend that if couples can plan in advance and start saving before the baby is born, I recommend couples invest in paternity leave. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm like, you can't set national policy, but you can be a policymaker in your household. And paternity leave makes such a difference in, exactly as you said, setting those patterns of who is the baby expert, who's responsible for all these different tasks, that I think it's worth investing in, even if it has to be unpaid. And so a lot of families say like, but we could never afford that. And I'm like, but if you want to take the Disney vacation, you save up for that, right? And so is this be something that you actually save up for before you have a baby? For dad to take leave after mom goes back to work so that he gets to be the primary provider, not the helper, not the number two parent, but the primary parent at home. And notice I said provider, because that's another way of being a provider, is providing care. And I think, dads deserve to have that role of like being number one in their kids' lives too.
Well said.
Well said. So, I mean, that's good. How can couples design systems, financial or domestic, that make time equity as real a goal as income equity?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And I think you have to get data, inside your couple. And that's why I recommend people track their time, because it's hard to say, without the data. Like sometimes you have a hypothesis and then that's not the empirical reality. When I was doing my research on time use, I had a hypothesis that childcare was going to be driving a lot of this inequality, because I thought that pattern of she takes maternity leave and then she's the one who ends up just doing so much more of the childcare. And then it turned out that housework, cooking and cleaning, is more unequally divided than childcare. And I was really surprised by that. And so, I had to look at the data to see what was happening. And I think couples are going to be surprised by that too, when they see that actually it might be some of the cleaning and the organizing and the planning and the decorating and the, making things nice. And the fact that cooking is not the big Sunday dinner, cooking is the school lunches, and it's the meal planning, and it's accommodating everyone's dietary preferences. And they might be really surprised to see that some of those things are divided more unequally than they think. So I think actually getting data within your household and seeing how the reality matches your values. I think always making sure that you have equal leisure time, because that is especially important for couples where sometimes they say to me,
Say that again.
well, he does earn
Say that
more
again.
money.
I love it. That is my North Star. What are you striving for?
Equal leisure time.
There we go.
Because sometimes they say like, okay, well, he does earn more money, so maybe it's fair that I do more of this and I do more of that. When he comes home, I take the kids and I do this, right? And then you realize, okay, but like this story in my book that I tell where the woman says, I haven't been for a run in 4 years since my son was born. And the husband says, I go for a swim for an hour every day because physical fitness and mental health is really important. I'm like, hold on, that's inequality, right?
Dr. Ross, this is a passion point for you. I mean, obviously you're an expert in this area. Can you explain how you believing that because you're the breadwinner, you deserve more leisure time? And that's your relationship with money, how toxic that can be?
It can be extremely toxic. I mean, I think what it can lead to is resentment. And really what I go back and I think of even some of, we've talked about this on the podcast before, of John Gottman's principles and the four horsemen of the apocalypse for the marriage, right? And what's the number one reason that couples separate or divorce, or that leads to conflict in the relationship there, is contempt. One partner is putting themselves on a pedestal. If you're saying that I deserve this, I get all of this because I'm better in some way, instead of treating each other as real equal partners, like, it's going to lead to conflict, resentment, frustration in the relationship.
Yeah, you had a passion point for us, because the idea that a woman who loves to run hasn't run in 4 years, like, she's not getting a good deal. She's not getting a good deal.
And I don't think in that case, it's not like if you sat down with them, her husband would be like, she doesn't deserve to run, right? But it's a pattern that they've both fallen into, where it's okay for her to sacrifice her needs for the kids, for the family, right? But his needs are getting met. And that has to stop. And it has to stop. Like, it's not just about the husband stepping up. I think it's women also recognizing we need to set boundaries for ourselves with our family. You know, that even though you would walk through a literal lake of fire to save your children, you should not be walking through a metaphorical lake of fire day in, day out to make everything okay for your kids at the expense of your own well-being. Because in the end of the day, when you're doing that, you can't be a good parent. You can't be a good partner, right? Parenting has to come from a place of being self-fulfilled, being centered, being present and whole yourself. And so, that was for me what cured like my mom guilt of feeling like, it was too hard to set boundaries, was that I saw, once I started getting my needs met, that I was such a better parent. And I saw my relationship with my son, the now 8-year-old, blossom because I was able to be present with him. So I think it's, for everyone to understand. And, in terms of women, I want them to understand for themselves that, like, you need this to show up for your family. And things like investing in your physical health, that's actually investing in your kids, because that's investing in being there for your grandkids, right? When your kids are older. And then on the other side, as Dr. Ross referred to, for the people who, might think, well, if somebody earns the money, then don't they deserve more of something, right? I want to be really clear that when we think about this in economics terms, that home production is economic production, okay? And it would be really hard if you have a partner who is providing a lot of home production, who's putting more time into the kids and putting more time into the house running. It would be extremely expensive to actually outsource all of that labor. One of the things that I say to demonstrate this is, if you actually think, and I'm sorry for the gay couples listening, but if you actually think about a gay male couple, how much it costs for them to have a child, that's the value of reproductive labor that a woman does to have a child. So a gay male couple would have to hire a surrogate for over $100,000 and pay over $30,000 for egg donation, okay? So you are in the high 6 figures to have a child. That's the value of the reproductive labor that moms bring to the table every time that they have a child. And so I just want to be super, super clear that when we think about it in economics, just because one person is working in the market and is getting paid in a paycheck, that does not reflect a higher value of their labor. That home production, reproductive labor, and investing in child human capital are enormously valuable economic production, and they deserve to be valued within the household. And the way that they're valued is in decision-making power and leisure time. And those should be allocated equally, no matter who earns more money.
Well said. This is why we need an economics professor on the podcast. So the name of your book, Having It All, right? You challenge this old idea of, quote unquote, having it all. So if we were to redefine success for couples today, what should replace that phrase?
So what I say in the book, and my little tagline is having it almost. It's that, we're not necessarily going to have it all, but we're going to, we're going to get close, right? We're going to have what we need to be fulfilled and happy and to be able to take a deep breath and relax. And that means that we're going to have to get comfortable with some domains in our life being messy and imperfect. Because I also think, sometimes I talked about men being stuck in the 1970s in terms of how much housework they do. But I think sometimes like women, we are stuck in the 1970s because we're still holding ourselves to this standard that says we have to have already decorated for Christmas and it has to be perfect. And we have to wrap presents the way they look on Instagram. And we have to do the big home cooked meals. And we have to have the hand decorated birthday cupcakes. And I said the homemade baby food, and our house has to look beautiful. And we have to have an herb garden on our windowsill and, flowers out front that bloom in the spring. And those standards are unrealistic when you have a full-time career outside the home. And so I think if we want to, quote, have it all of what we really need, which is spending the time that matters with our kids and investing in them, spending time with our partner and enjoying our lives, and having a career that is both fulfilling and converts our time into money, we've got to make peace with all of those things looking a little different than they would if any one of them were our sole pursuit in life.
So this book, it's both a guide and a call to action, right? So what do you hope men in particular, I guess, will take away from having it all about their role in building more equal partnerships?
I've had so many great conversations with men about the book. And so I will say that I think it is reaching them. And I think one of the reasons is, and so for guys who are thinking like, should I read this? Is this book for women? I think one of the reasons that men have enjoyed reading it is because I speak in the language of economics and it almost translates it into something tangible. So I'm not saying like, you should do this because of, people's feelings or whatever. I'm saying like, here's the kind of dollars and cents of this and why, when you contribute to the household, this is how you help create economic surplus, right? And this is how it's actually going to make your entire household more money, because if you can efficiently invest each of your time, you're going to earn more. And then, you're going to have nicer vacations and a nicer car. So I think that it makes things really tangible and practical for men. And so I hope that they will read it. And I would say the biggest thing that I hope that they take away is that a tremendous amount of surplus comes from being in a good relationship, being married. Surveys of young men show that what they want is to get married and to have kids, okay? And the way that you are going to stay married and stay in that good relationship is by being able to show up as a full partner, right? You cannot just kind of take and be on the receiving end of the benefits of a relationship, because they're going to run out. It's only when you invest in a relationship, when you invest in your wife's career, when you invest in her happiness and well-being, when you invest in her mental health, when you support her and holding her boundaries, right, that you are going to be able to keep reaping the benefits of that. Because as soon as she gets depleted and hits rock bottom, then any of those benefits of the relationship are going to stop. So your job is to make sure that that doesn't happen, because that actually sustains the fabric of your household.
Well said. Well said. So thank you so much for being here on our podcast. But as we end every podcast, we would like to hear from you one simple and actionable step you want our listeners to take away from today's conversation.
So I'm going to have to go back to leisure time, because as we talked about, that's, such a hot button issue. And I'm first going to give you a reframe of leisure time, because I think a lot of people feel like they're sort of wasting time when they take leisure time, right? But in the language of economics, what you are maximizing in life is something called utility, which is how we measure the sort of sum total of your happiness, fulfillment over your lifetime. And it's like an individual's personal profit function. Okay. And in that world of utility, taking leisure makes utility points, right? It gives you fulfillment and happiness. So why is it any more productive to spend an hour working to get money that I can use to buy something that gives me utility points than it is to spend an hour doing something directly that gives me utility points? In economics, those things are equally productive. And so I want us to understand leisure time as productive, and therefore as something that needs to be prioritized in our calendars. And so if you are listening and you're a guy and you are getting your leisure time right now that you've heard it framed this way, I want you to figure out how your wife can also get her leisure
Yeah.
time, how that's going to be
Mm.
prioritized. How is that going to be blocked out on the calendar and protected from the kids and even from her job and from things that, come up? If you are a woman that's listening, that's your homework yourself. Also, block it out on your calendar like it's a meeting with your boss, whatever it is that fills your cup and restores you. And when I say true leisure time, I mean something that meets your needs first. I don't want to hear baking cookies with your kids, even though if you might love it, right? That's not true leisure time. I mean something that truly restores you, as that's the primary objective, is it's something for you. And I want you to make sure that 3 times a week that is blocked out on your calendar and is something that you're getting. And so if you are, like I said, if you're a modern husband listening, this is something that you can do right now, is try to figure out how your wife is going to get her leisure time. And I promise you, because it is productive, it is going to have benefits that are going to reverberate throughout the entire household.
Well, you heard it, fellas. That's our first task, is to get to the shared calendar, figure out times at least 3 days a week to block out for her and us, to make sure that we have, as you define leisure time, it has to fill your personal buckets first. Again, you've got to, folks, go to CorinneLow.com to download the time tracking sheet. And that's where you can also purchase the book, Having It All, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Buy the book, Having It All. If you just Google Having It All, Dr. Low, it comes up. It's the first thing that comes up. You can find it anywhere. I mean, she's been all over the country talking about this book. But trust me, when you read the book, you will walk away a better man and a better husband if you employ some of the strategies that she's sharing. Dr. Low, we know your time is valuable, and we appreciate that you spent it with us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I'll also just say there is an audiobook. If you're like, I don't have time to read, there is an audiobook on Audible, so you can listen to it while you take your walk or your run, your productive leisure time.
Even
Thank
better.
you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Don't leave just yet. Be sure to like and subscribe before you do. And a reminder to visit modernhusbands.com if you're looking for money and home management support in your life. Just click the Our Services button at the top of the page. Again, that's at modernhusbands.com. And many thanks to our co-hosts, our guests, and of course, all of you for joining today.